For Victims and Villains, my name is Josh, and today we are going to ask the question, who rules? If you know, you know, this is the rule of Jenny Penn. The rule of Jenny Penn tells the story of a judge who suffers a heart attack and is forced to live and reside amongst a psychopath in the nursing home from hell. I am going to say John Lithgow. When you hear anyone talk about this movie, they are going to talk about John Lithgow. I am going to be no exception. John Lithgow gives an incredible performance and reminds us once again just how versatile of an actor he really is. Lithgow is the only reason that I would recommend this movie. It is the reason to seek out this movie. It is the reason to watch this movie. This is one of the most chilling performances that he has given in his career. He has this quality about him that has just this fear-mongering terror about him. And honestly, I don't think this movie could have worked with anyone else in that role, but it's just because Lithgow just did that incredible of a job. Now, that's not to say that co-star Geoffrey Rush doesn't also give an exquisite performance as well. Rush is very good in this movie as well, but again, Lithgow just dominates the screen, and his presence is felt and echoed literally throughout the course of this movie, even when he's not on screen. James Ashcroft and Eli Kent do an incredible job here as well as serving as the writers, but I did have some problem with the pacing of this movie. I did feel like there were multiple times within this film's third act that could have served as a proper ending versus the very predictable one that we ended up getting. Though I will say the final shot in this movie is very cool from a visual standpoint and is a very satisfying piece of symbolism that I really did like. But again, the ending to this movie is aggressively predictable. Even with all of the things that this movie has going for it, like the incredible performances, the writing, however mangled it may be at times, this film does have a very solid foundation, but it's just one of those movies that's just okay. Like, I never really feel like the film raises to be as sinister as it truly could be. There are definitely some aspects of the Lithgow character that feels like they are handled with kid gloves, or that they kind of had this safety on for when they were crafting his character to not make him seem too dark. And honestly, I really wish that they kind of would just double down and commit it to make him as sinister as he actually feels. Like, I do love how ambiguous they make a lot of the history of Lithgow's relationship to the nursing home feel throughout the course of this. I do kind of love that there is these moments where you kind of have to infer, but also at the same time, I really would have loved to kind of see it be a little darker than what it actually is. Now, that's not to say that this film doesn't deal with dark entirely. This is one of those psychological thrillers that definitely embraces its very real humanity, and I think because of Rush's character and his story arc throughout the course of this film, not only what he goes through, but also really adds to the ambiguous nature to where the conclusion of this film actually could be way scarier than what you actually see on screen just by context clues and inference. I think this is one of the best films when you're talking about mental health perspective, and I'm not going to expand on this too much because I feel like this film does just leaps and bounds better than I could ever kind of talk about in a video, but this film is one of the best representations I've seen in terms of kind of adjusting to a new space, but also at the same time is that fear of uncertainty, especially when you feel like you still have so much left to offer into this world. And maybe this movie is better than I'm actually giving it on, and maybe it kind of it hits a little bit close to home, just a little bit of the things that I've recently gone through with my wife. But overall, I think this movie is a solid watch, but let's run this one through the Rorschach rating scale. One of the things that I will also say about this movie with the baby dolls, there is a lot of very creepy presence. This film feels very atmospheric, and it does the horror visually very well. It is just not always communicated narratively well. And with that said, I am ready to run this through our Rorschach rating scale. I'm going to go ahead and give The Rule of Jenny Penn a 3 out of 5. I think overall the best reason that I can recommend for people to watch this movie would be the chilling and commanding performance of John Lithgow. Geoffrey Rush is also a performance worth talking about, and the writing overall for the most part is a very solid watch. But the film never feels like it truly commits to how sinister it makes its characters be, and it just leaves the audience kind of feeling robbed by the end. The Rule of Jenny Penn is now playing in limited release from IFC Films and Shudder, which also means that this will be streaming on the Shudder app later this year, so keep your eyes on it. If you guys have seen The Rule of Jenny Penn, what did you guys think? Comment below and let me know. Let's talk about mental health. If you guys are new to our content, Mental Health Moment is where we take a theme of mental health out of the film, which we're reviewing, talk about it for a few moments in the hopes to deconstruct the stigma surrounding mental health. The Rule of Jenny Penn is riddled in mental health themes and truly psychological. But I think one of the most terrifying things that this film offers is the actual experience of going through trauma and not actually having anyone to go through it with or to really rely on. And the dangers that that really unfortunately leaves somebody with when they're going through or experiencing something along those lines. Geoffrey Rush's character experiences a stroke at the beginning of the movie, as I mentioned during the synopsis, which leads him to this nursing facility. And as a result of that, he says at one point in the film that he, at that point in his life, would have envisioned it being filled with people being around, floral arrangements, grandkids, children. And he said that he felt like for that part, like he had nothing to really show for his life up until that point, which so many times when there is community knocking at his door, he just continuously shuts it down. But you kind of see how that lack of community and that lack of support really does ultimately have an impact on his mental health while going through this ordeal. While sometimes it might not ever be something as severe as a stroke, sometimes it can be something as simple as depression or anxiety. It's really important to understand the warning signs for what something like that looks like. That way we have a way to kind of break that mold and really start to have conversations with people that we may feel like are going through those things or may be currently experiencing some form of trauma, and what that looks like in terms of being ready to have those conversations and to understand the warning signs and to let people know that you're there for them, because at the end of the day, that is really what's going to matter. I don't think my mental health would be as secure now if it wasn't for the mountains of people that I had during my wife's ordeal just a few weeks ago. Having family and friends both rely on me, and bands that we've booked over the years, filmmakers we've worked with, podcasters, friends, coworkers, etc. That list just goes on and on. I mean, it could literally be someone, it could be one person. Community can literally be a singular individual, but just understanding and having the knowledge that there is somebody there to go through with it, that way you're not alone. It's going to make the world of difference. If you or someone you know is currently struggling with suicide, addiction, self-harm, or depression, please click the links in our show notes below, where you guys will find links to our mental health resource library. Once again, The Rule of Jenny Penn is now playing in limited release from IFC Films and Shudder, and will be on the Shudder app later this year. In the show notes below, you guys will also find links to our social media. More movie reviews like this, access to our podcast network, official site for upcoming events, and much more. If you guys would like to support us financially, we also have links to do that via Paramount Plus and Patreon down below, and help us get mental health resources into places like conventions and film festivals. But until next time, remember to keep it classy and keep it spooky. Have a great night.